Thanks for checking out Kentucky Running, presented by John's Run Walk Shop. I'm your host, Matt Reno, and I'm excited to dive deep into the world of running in the Bluegrass State. If you want to keep up with the conversations we're going to have on this show, please subscribe to the podcast. On this first episode, we've got tons of valuable information for you. I'm going to be talking with Kelsey Karnes, a physical therapist from Move Smart in Lexington. She's got some great tips for preventing injuries, working cross-training into your running routine, and we talk about some running-related issues that affect women specifically. But before we get to that, we're going to run through some tech talk with our running shoe buyer, Kellen Ague-Nealon. He's going to tell us about some new shoe releases coming this spring, as well as a well-known brand that's making its way to John's Run Walk Shop in the very near future. Kellen, we got some exciting news coming up. We've got a new brand that we're bringing to John's Run Walk Shop. We're going to hold off on that announcement for just a minute, keep people on the edges of their seats. But first, let's talk about some updates to some shoes that are coming up this spring.
Yeah, so thank you, Matt. So over the past month or so, we've had a few key updates. There was a brand new On Cloud Monster 2. The new Hoka Mach arrived. Every month, there's a new update or a new shoe arriving here in stores. April, for the most part, has been pretty quiet, though we do have a new shoe coming in here at the end of the month, the Brooks Go 16, and that'll be arriving here. Not too much of a massive leap in terms of the shoe updates or major changes, but it's a staple in the lineup, and people who've been wearing that shoe for a long time, they'll be pleased to get a solid update to a real workhorse in our catalog of shoes. The following month of May, there are a lot of new shoes coming in. I'll name a few for you that are key here for us. The Saucony Triumph 22 gets an update. On Cloud Runner 2 arrives. The Ultra Experience Flow arrives. So some of them are relatively new to you. The Experience franchise, it was new to Ultra in 2023. In 2024, the Flow takes over from the Forward Experience. Ultra, for those who don't know, historically has been a zero drop shoe or sort of a natural foot shape. As a brand, that's something they're known for. The Experience, Forward Experience that came out in 23, and now the Experience Flow arriving here in May, is a 4mm drop shoe with a kind of a rocker geometry. So a little bit of a change for them as a brand. It's been incredibly successful for us here in the store. If you're interested in those kind of features, low drop, rocker geometry, if you're familiar with that, this shoe will work great for you. If you have any questions, you can always come in and ask us. We'll give you more of a in-store tech talk if you need that. But moving on, the Cloud Runner is the stability model that we carry from On. The Cloud Runner 2 gets a little bit of a cosmetic update in terms of the upper. More importantly, we're bringing it in with a wide last or wide fit, a staple within the stability lineup from On. Now we'll carry in the regular width and a wide, which is new for us. Really excited about that update. On continues to perform incredibly well here in store for us. And then the Saucony Triumph, that's a staple. We're in the 22nd iteration of that shoe, so it's been around for a long time. That's kind of the Cadillac big cushion premium shoe from the neutral line. So a shoe that's been around for a long time. Most people are probably, if they are wearing Saucony shoes, they're familiar with that model. Lots of cushion, premium comfort. Those are just a couple. There's even some more options. Look for our social media advertising. We'll be plugging all the new shoes that come in over the course of the month of May. Make sure they're on your radar when they arrive here in store.
All right, awesome. Sounds like we got a really exciting spring coming up. Now, the big news, we've got another brand we are adding to our shelves. What is it, Kellen?
Yeah, really excited to announce this. We are going to be bringing in Adidas at the beginning of this summer here, end of May, early June. You'll see now Adidas be featured on our running wall. There'll be a few models to choose from. We'll be announcing the models more specifically once they get closer to the launch date at the end of the month of May, early June. But it's really exciting for us here in store. Adidas is obviously Most people will recognize the brand. They've been around for a long time within run specialty and all sorts of track and field performance. So look for Adidas to be coming into John's here beginning of the summer 2024.
I would love to play some Run DMC on the podcast right now, but I don't want to get us shut down in the very first episode. But thanks a lot, Kellen. Some great announcements, very exciting stuff happening in the very near future at John's Run Walk Shop. My guest today is Kelsey Karnes, physical therapist from Move Smart, Kentucky. Kelsey, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right, excited to have you. I think we're going to have a lot of good information for runners to listen to and hopefully take to heart. So something interesting I want to start with. I saw on your Instagram, you had a post with the advice, try less. You talk about patients who want to show that they're giving 100% to their physical therapy, but that method doesn't always work. Can you explain that try less philosophy?
Yeah. So we treat a lot of patients that are, whether they're athletes, endurance competitors, whether like their goal is just to be able to get in the floor and play with their grandkids. And what we see is that oftentimes people try so hard to be able to achieve the muscle activation we want or the range of motion that we want. And then the trying so hard becomes problematic and causes increased risk for injury. And a lot of times it's because people want their physical therapist to think that, yeah, they're doing a great job. They're doing all their exercises at home. They're really pushing hard. But oftentimes we actually need less effort to be able to get the muscle activation or the mobility or even the relaxation of muscles that we want to help the body heal. And that trying less concept can allow for better healing.
Okay, good. Well, I think that automatically makes it sound a little less intimidating to go to physical therapy. Nice. Now, when you see patients with running injuries, what are some of the most common causes that you're seeing?
Yeah. So I'll start with like some of the most common injuries that I see. I see a lot of hip, knee, ankle, and foot injuries, whether that be stress fractures, whether that be just general like knee pain, like front of the knee pain, side of the knee pain, IT band syndrome. I know all of us runners like have been plagued by IT band syndrome at one time or another. I know at least I have. You know, hip pain, bursitis, those kinds of different things. One of the biggest common causes of the running related injuries that I see is overuse or overtraining and not balancing out that training load like it needs to be balanced and not incorporating other things such as strength training, cross training, mobility work. You know, and then if we dive a little bit deeper into that specifically, especially in a lot of my adolescent runners, as well as a lot of female runners, I see a lot of hip weakness deficits. So like the weakness in the hip muscles are going to directly impact the knee, the foot, and the ankle, and how well we manage load kind of through the ground. So I would say probably number one most common would be overuse of their body, running too much or running not consistently and doing a lot one week and maybe not a lot another week. And then also just weakness in the hip musculature.
So how would someone know, aside from actually being injured, how would they know if they're overtraining?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So really what we've looked at in the research, we used to say the 10% rule, like don't increase your volume or your intensity more than 10% each week. But the most recent evidence that has come out in the literature has said that you can kind of push that up to like 20, but not exceeding like 30%. So definitely looking at your week to week volume and saying like, okay, if I ran, a mile last week total, I don't need to run more than maybe, 3 miles the following week. Obviously, people are running way more than that. But so thinking about trying to keep your training volume increase from week to week in that kind of 10 to 30% range. And if you're a new runner, staying definitely closer to that 10% range. If you're more of an elite runner or you've ran for years, you could probably bump it up a little. That's one thing to look at. The second thing is like, are your muscles having time to recover or are you chronically sore? Like if you go out for a run, like a long run on a Sunday, and then on Tuesday you go for, you've got a speed workout plan, but when you start, your legs feel like super heavy and super sore and super achy, and that doesn't get better. It still continues throughout your run. You probably didn't give your legs enough time to recover in between those runs, and you could be at risk for overtraining. The other thing I see is people running, like getting into running and then running on back-to-back days. That's fine if you're somebody who's ran for a while and you've conditioned your body for that. But if you are new to running and just starting out, make sure to space those days out a little bit. And then the last kind of indicator is injury, right? Like, so having pain with your runs. Obviously, running can be uncomfortable. Like if I'm going to do a hill workout, I'm not just like loving life the whole time. But I tell people that when you experience pain that doesn't warm up, so if you're going on a run and you have pain and it doesn't warm up, like after 5 or 10 minutes, your pain is still there, or it gets worse over the course of your run, that's kind of an indicator that an injury might be brewing and you might need to back off your run for just a little bit, or maybe take a little break from running for a few days or so to let that calm down. Any pain also that's above like a 3 out of 10 intensity, like if 0 to 10, 10 is like go to the ER. Anything more than just a mild achy pain, kind of also a little bit of a yellow flag. And then if you have pain that lingers on after your run, so you go on a run and later that night you're having like sharp, intense pain or pain that wakes you up at night, like those are all some concerning signs that you may be overtraining and have an injury potentially brewing.
Mm-hmm. That's good advice. I think a lot of runners think, you mentioned the back to back to back. As I've gotten older, I've tried to get fewer runs during the week, but more quality runs. And that's really helped me a lot, more than just pushing through a bad, uncomfortable run, just to have another run on my calendar.
Yeah. Same here. So I'm coming up on my 15th year of running. And I have learned the hard way, even as a physical therapist, by running, if I am busy and I'm like, oh shoot, I missed my run today. Well, I'll do a morning and an evening run the next day. Great. We'll make it up. And then my body breaks down by that weekend when it's time for the long run. So I get that desire because I too have been there, even with all of my knowledge about the body. It's tempting because those of us who run usually love running. And so it's tempting to want to train more.
Let's go back to cross training. I'm guilty of this myself. I'll try to convince myself if I'm running up hills, that's same as doing squats, right?
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. Why is cross training so important?
Yeah, no, I love that you brought that up. I'm really passionate about this topic. So cross training is super important because repetitive overuse injuries come from doing the same motion over and over and over again. So when you're running, whether that is up hills, on trails, on a track, you're still having repetitive knee movement. We call it flexion and extension, where you kind of extend and bend your knee, repetitive hip movement and repetitive foot movement. And over time, when you just have that repetitive movement happening over and over and over again, specific muscles work more than others, and specific joints have more force on them than others, and they can become inflamed or irritated or angry. So the purpose of cross training is to provide different activities from running to work different muscle groups than you're working when you're running. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of carryover. So cycling is a really great cross-training activity for running. You're going to work the fronts of your thighs and your glutes and your hamstrings all with both of those activities, but you're doing them differently. So cycling is going to work similar muscles to running, but without the impact of running. So now we're still working muscles with a few different muscles in there, but we're taking off the load of the joint so they can have a break. Same thing with swimming. That's an excellent cross-training activity. Swimming is really good if you've got a knee injury that's painful when you bend and straighten it and it still is uncomfortable to bike. You could go for a swim. So it takes all of the gravity out of the system. And so now you can really work on cardio, but without such an overload to your muscles. So it gives your muscles and everything a really good time to take a break. I do triathlons. I've meandered from running by myself, running in solo as a sport, to doing more triathlon based stuff. And I've seen a huge difference in my body with doing more cross training, as well as a significant reduction in my injury rates. So especially with swimming. So I actually use swimming as a recovery day to still get my cardio. So I'm still feeling like I'm doing something, I'm getting all my extra energy out, but I'm not overwhelming my muscles and my joints, and I'm giving them time to recover and to heal. So I, like I said, as a runner, used to think, I don't want to cross train. I'd rather just run. That's what I want to do. But now as a triathlete, doing more cross training has been super beneficial to me as far as helping me get injured less and helping me run stronger and better, honestly.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I love swimming. No impact on the knees.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great for recovery. Okay, here's a question for people wondering if they need physical therapy or wondering if they're injured or if it's just going to go away quickly. What are some signs to look for if you're feeling some discomfort during your run, but you're not quite sure if it's necessary to seek professional help yet, or if you can just let it go for a little while?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And my answer, short answer, it depends. There is a longer answer that I can give you some warning signs. So I mentioned earlier the pain that doesn't warm up. So if you're consistently, I would say like 2 or 3 runs in a row, you're having pain when you start your run, and it either worsens or stays the same through the whole run. And it's not just muscle soreness. Like we all know what it feels like when we're running up a steep hill and our quads are burning, you know?
Right.
But this is more like sharp, intense pain that doesn't really get better. And if that happens on just one run and then it's fine, probably don't need to go to PT. But if you're seeing that trend consistently where you go on 2 or 3 runs in a week, and on 2 or 3 of those runs, you're feeling that pain that lasts through the whole run, whether that's in the foot, the knee, the ankle, the low back, the pelvis, that's kind of I would say an indicator that you should get it checked out. And I'll provide a subtle plug for PT and other musculoskeletal professions like ortho. The sooner you get stuff looked at when it flares up, the easier and faster it is to treat. So when patients come in to see me and they've only been having pain for a week, it is so much faster to get them back to running pain free than if they just kind of ignore it and let it go on for 6 months to a year, because then our body has completely changed how it's moving. And we've developed all these compensation patterns. And so not only do we have to figure out what the initial source of the injury was, but now we have to relearn out of those compensation patterns. So pain is one indicator, pain during runs. Another indicator is pain that happens at night after a run. So this is really common for stress fractures. So it's really I speak as someone who's had a stress fracture and treated many stress fractures. So pain that you might have some pain during the run, but it might be totally manageable. Mm-hmm. But then if that pain kind of happens when you're laying in bed at night or when you're resting at home, then might cause to warrant to make an appointment with either a PT or an ortho. And if you go to a PT and they suspect a fracture or something that's not just simple muscular injury, they'll refer you to ortho. UK has a great walk-in sports med clinic. You don't even have to have a referral. You just show up 8 to 12 Monday through Friday, subtle plug for them. Nice. So pain at night, pain after your runs, pain that doesn't warm up or gets worse during your runs. Obviously swelling, like that's something to look for, but sometimes that's not as common with running related injuries. I would say the 2 biggest ones that I see is pain at night and pain that doesn't warm up.
Okay. Another thing I want to bring up that runners sometimes ignore because all we want to do is run and eat.
I love it. Yes.
Stretching.
Yes.
It's kind of like going to the dentist and they tell you to floss.
Yes.
You're like, yeah, I know I should floss, but you don't get in the habit. Stretching can be like that too.
Yes.
Tell us, why is stretching so important? What are some easy strategies to make it a habit?
Yeah, that's really good. So if you guys have followed along with Move Smart on Instagram, Sarah, my colleague, one of her favorite things to say is mobility, not stretching. So I'm going to use the word mobility and stretching a little bit differently today. So when I say the word stretching, I mean just like holding a position for a prolonged period of time. When I use the word mobility, I mean kind of moving through some different positions. So it's a little bit more dynamic. So when we look at the evidence, I think a lot of the reason why people don't stretch is that like there's not a lot of great evidence around this topic. Like if we actually, like in PT school, we talked about this a ton. I had like half my professors were team stretching. Half my professors were like, don't stretch, it's a waste of time. Because really the evidence is pretty mixed as far as like what are the benefits, especially for the running related population. So what I have found in my years of treating as well as years as a runner is that it's more beneficial to do more of a dynamic mobility kind of exercise routine than it is to just sit and static stretch. So I tell people, and when I've gone out to various community run groups, I've led a lot of dynamic warm-ups. So before you start running, walking is an example of a dynamic warm-up. That can be a great way to kind of do the same thing that stretching would do, but in a way that mimics running and in a way that provides more lubrication for your joints because you're actually moving those joints. So walking, leg swings, I don't know what people call them, like apple tree pickers or whatever, where you like hop and jump and whatever. So hopping, jumping, plyometrics, any of that stuff can be good dynamic warm up. And then I love just general mobility work for runners. That can include some static stretching where you're just kind of sitting and stretching your hamstring, or same with your quad. I mean, that's the easiest way for me to be able to stretch the front of my thigh is to just kind of hold my foot up towards my bottom and kind of bend my knee and get that stretch. That's great to do after a run. So after you've already warmed up the tissue, it's fine if you want to do some static stretching where you hold the stretch. So hamstrings, quads, calves, calves are a big one. Yep. And then the bent knee calf stretch, that's a really great one for running. So where you go into a calf stretch and you actually get into a calf stretch, but then bend your knee. Okay. Stretches a little bit of a different muscle than just a straight leg calf stretch does. And that muscle is called the soleus, and it's super important for runners. And so a lot of people have a lot of tension there, and it can cause shin splints. It can cause stress fractures. It can cause decreased ankle mobility. So that's a really good one if you want to include it in your stretching. I love the foam roller. Okay. Same. I think the foam roller is a fantastic way to self-treat yourself, or the stick, whatever you want to use, or the massage gun. They all do the same thing. It increases blood flow. It works out any areas of restriction that you have. So if you are like, listen, I'm not going to sit in the floor and stretch, then sit in the floor and roll on the foam roller. I know it's like some people's worst enemy, but it's like a love-hate relationship. But that can be another really good option to add to your routine. And so as far as to answer your question about how to fit it in, I tell people to carve out 5 minutes before and after your run. So 5 minutes to warm yourself up, do whatever you want to do. It could be a walk. It could be a light jog, whatever it is. And then 5 minutes at the end where either you do some mobility work where you're kind of moving through some stretches, or you're holding a stretch, or you're doing some deep breathing, or you are using your foam roller, your massage gun, your stick roller, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it can be a little tricky to first get into it. First time you foam roll, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But after a little bit, you're going to get used to it and you look forward to it. At least I do.
Yeah.
I really like foam rolling now.
Yes.
It's just such a relief after a hard workout.
Yes, I love that.
So at Move Smart, you talk about a lot of issues that affect women specifically. Can we talk about what some of those issues are that affect women runners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a physical therapist first, but I specialize in pelvic health, meaning I treat a lot of disorders related to the bladder, to the bowels, to sexual function, that kind of stuff. So I see a lot of women. That's like a primary population I treat. I see a lot of people postpartum as well. That's my specific passion, is female runners. Issues specific to women, I'll speak a little bit just about the female population, female-bodied individuals in general. So the female body and the female pelvis is built a little different than the male pelvis. It's a little bit wider. And that means that we have a little bit, as women, a little bit more angle in our hips, which plays into the amount of force that goes into our knees and our ankles and how much activation we have in the muscles around our pelvis. So I see more incidences of weakness in the hip musculature in females than in males that are runners. So that can lead to knee pain. That can lead to alignment kind of issues in the lower leg and the foot, which can lead to altered stress on the foot or the shin or the thigh bone or the knee or the hip. So that's a big one that I see, is weakness in the hips and specifically the glute muscles. So kind of the buttock muscles. Subtle plug for strength training here. Every runner needs to do strength training. And if every runner did strength training, I would work myself out of a job much faster. Okay. Because a lot of the people that I'm seeing with a lot of these overuse injuries, or especially like a lot of my adolescent runners and especially female runners, aren't doing any strength training. And so you're just beating down your body with running, which can be really great for your body, but you're doing only running, not doing any strength building. And so the muscles that maybe aren't naturally strong for you are getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and you're losing some of that stability piece that you need to keep you healthy with running. So hip strengthening, glute specific strengthening is huge for preventing injury, especially in the female population. Another thing that I see as a huge factor for women, and especially women who've had kids, is that kind of postpartum return to running. So there's not a lot of great advice, from doctors at the 6-week follow-up on exactly when you should go back to running. How much should you run? How long should you run? What should your runs be like? Should they be on hills? Should you, ease back into it? What does that look like? And so there's actually been a ton of research come out on this topic here recently, and I have been all over it because that is my favorite thing to look into. I love to be able to see people postpartum and help them get back to running. So we do things such as checking out their posture, because posture changes with pregnancy. I mean, you're growing another human being. So right. Your posture is going to change. We check out their posture. We look at core strength, which is totally going to change. We look at hip strength, hip range of motion, mobility. Pregnancy and postpartum create a little bit more movement in the ligaments and the connective tissue of the pelvis, the knees, the ankles, the feet. And that can contribute to more injury for people because they don't have enough muscular stability to support that increase in mobility. So there's an imbalance there. Other things postpartum is just like a lack of sleep, an increase in stress. I read a research study that examined postpartum runners within the first 6 months postpartum, and it found that decreased sleep, increased stress, like decreased hip strength, all of these things are factors into why people get more injured in this phase of life. So I would say kind of that postpartum phase, while it's an awesome time, I am super supportive of postpartum running. I want my postpartum runners to get back to running ASAP. But I want them to do so safely, because there's nothing more discouraging than feeling like, okay, I'm going to get back to this after I've had to take this time off. And then right out of the gate, you get injured. That just sucks. I mean, I've been there.
Very demoralizing.
Yeah.
Too, sure.
Yeah. Super demoralizing. So
what are some things that they can do to make sure they're on the right track once they get back into running?
Yeah, that's a great question. I encourage everyone to see a pelvic floor physical therapist postpartum. So whether it's me here at Move Smart, whether it's any number of the other wonderful pelvic floor physical therapists around Lexington, just go, even if it's just for one appointment. The amount of stuff you're going to learn compared to just what you can learn just from your general GYN visits is just huge. They're going to look at you specifically and see, what's your hip strength like? What's your core strength like? Do you have any, things that maybe are like kind of yellow flags for maybe having more caution going back to running, or to see if you're ready to go back to running? We as physical therapists are experts at doing gait analysis. So I go out with all of my postpartum patients, all my patients in general that are runners. I'm going to watch you run before I say, yeah, go back to doing 15 miles a week or 20 miles a week or 30 miles a week. And we can look at how they're running and look at their form and analyze their shoe wear, analyze their, shoe needs. That's something that's a huge thing postpartum, because the feet change. I send pretty much every one of my postpartum runners to get their shoes looked at. And John's is an awesome resource for us as PTs. So to get their shoes looked at, get their feet looked at, see if they need new shoes, see what kind of shoes they need, and to help them, because that's a huge issue that I see. My biggest advice is don't try to return to it on your own. Don't try. Yes, there's a lot of really great online programs out there, but everyone is different, and there's no cookie cutter program that's going to work specifically for everybody. If there was, I wouldn't have a job. So, right. But my biggest advice to these women that are postpartum is to just make an appointment with a pelvic floor physical therapist. And even if you don't do it right at 6 weeks postpartum, just make it at some point, even if it's 10 years after. Just check in and make sure that all the things that you need to be a healthy runner are functioning properly.
Are there any issues related to women and running that some people are just a little maybe embarrassed to bring up, or they think they're the only ones going through it? Anything that you encounter?
Oh, yes. So I love that you asked me this question as a pelvic floor PT. But so one of the biggest things that I see that people don't want to talk about, they would rather just ignore, or that they just decide not to run because of it, is leakage. So people who have leakage of urine when they run, whether that's just a little bit or it's a lot and it like impacts their run, or it's just like, I feel like I'm going to pee my pants the whole time I'm running. I have a lot of patients that just gave up running because of it, because they just thought, well, you know what? This is life. I'm getting older, or I've had a baby and I'm just going to pee my pants when I run. So I'll just not run and take up walking, which is fine. But if you want to run, that doesn't have to be your story. And so I just want to add a subtle plug that if you are somebody who is struggling with leakage when you're running, don't just settle for that. There are solutions out there to get you completely leak-free with running. There are providers out there that are trained and expertise in looking at this. Specifically, pelvic floor PTs are going to be the most trained to address this piece of things. But that can totally be treated. And I think it's just not being talked about a lot, honestly, by women. So people just don't know that there's help out there. So they just kind of suffer in silence.
Yeah, maybe they don't think anyone else is going through this.
Yeah, or
so
embarrassed. Like, I mean, I don't want to talk about that. You know, I get, obviously, well, I'm a pelvic floor PT, so I talk about it all day. So, but I mean, I get that. Like, it feels embarrassing. But, you know, 33% of women in the United States have leakage. 1 in 3. So chances are, if you're talking about it with your friends, that one of them is also probably struggling and is not going to judge you for talking about it. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad someone is talking about that.
Yes.
Awesome. Let's talk about the importance of proper footwear for runners. Now, I could talk about it all day, but let's hear from someone who doesn't work for John's Run Walk Shop. Why can you not just walk into any big box store that sells shoes, pick out any pair that you think looks good and hope for the best? Why do you need to talk to someone who knows about shoes?
Yeah. Oh gosh. I have so many thoughts. I was like cringing as you were saying that about walking into just a random store and buying shoes. That used to be me, by the way, but is no longer me. I mean, the shoe is the interface between your foot and the ground. Right. So your shoe manages all the force that goes up from the ground into your body goes through your shoe, and all the force that goes down from your body into the ground goes through your shoe. So it's pretty dang important, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're somebody who likes a more minimalist shoe, or you're somebody who's like, no, sign me up for all that cushion. I want to feel like I'm running on a cloud. Regardless, it's important that you have someone look at your feet and decide which shoe might be better for you. If you're somebody that's really prone to injuries like stress fractures, it's not going to be a great idea for you to go throw on a pair of shoes that are minimalist, that are going to make your foot and ankle and shin and all these things have to work harder and aren't going to cushion that force and that load. That doesn't mean that you can't work up to that, but probably wouldn't jump right into that. And that's where having a professional fit you and look at your feet and listen to your needs is really important, because as you guys will talk about, I'm sure, on the podcast, like different shoes are made for different runners.
Right.
So I'm not going to roll out in a, maximum cushion Hoka for a speed workout, or a really heavy shoe for a speed workout. I'm going to want a lighter shoe, but that's because and that's where professionals come in. I don't know, even as a PT, I might be able to tell you need shoes with a little more arch support or maybe a little less or what have you. But you guys are the ones that are the experts at knowing the shoe, knowing what type of cushion is in that shoe. What type of running is that shoe good for? Is it better for gravel, road, trail? What type of running shoe is better for longer versus shorter distances? And then also just looking at the person walk and run. That's what I love about what you guys do, is it's not just oh, well, every person that walks in here is going to try on a pair of Hokas, a pair of Brooks, a pair of Asics, and then they can just pick which one they like.
Right.
It's more no, let's actually look at you walk. Let's try some different shoes that might fit your body body profile and the type of running you do. And then let's know what's most comfortable to you. And it's just so important because you're putting hundreds and hundreds of miles on shoes, hopefully not too many hundreds because you need to get your shoes replaced frequently. But it's the one piece of equipment for running that is managing all the force of the activity. So it's really stinking important to make sure you got a good pair of shoes going on.
Right. And our feet do different things. People who pronate, meaning they walk or run with their feet rolling toward their big toes, that's different than someone who runs on the outside of their feet.
Yeah.
They need different shoes.
Absolutely.
Because foot pain causes pain in other areas of the body too.
Well, yeah. If your feet hurt, you're going to limp.
Yeah.
Even if it's not like a big limp, you're going to shift weight off of that foot, which is going to put more force other places. Also, I love that you guys have inserts there. Like in store, like you're able to look at, if you can't get a shoe to work exactly perfect for somebody, you can add an interface of an insert into those shoes without having to go spend hundreds of dollars on custom orthotics, which are sometimes needed, but not always. Power Steps, companies like that make really great orthotics that work really well for most average people. And I love that you guys have the knowledge and the ability to know how to fit that for people and to know what they need and be able to offer that service for them.
As we wrap up, last question, I just want to know if you want to share any personal tips or experiences from your own running journey that have shaped your approach to treating and advising runners.
Yeah. So I would say my biggest takeaway as a runner. So like I said, I'm coming up on 15 years as a runner. I do more long distance running. So I would prefer the half marathon and the marathon distance. And now I've transitioned a little bit more into triathlon, is really strength training and cross training are really stinking important. Find something you love doing, even if it's just like, I'm going to go to the pool for 15 minutes a couple times a week, or I'm just going to ride my bike around the block. Like, find something that you enjoy and do it in addition to your runs, and don't just run by itself. Because really, when I started incorporating strength training and when I started incorporating cross training into my running schedule, I not only got faster as a runner, which shocked me, to be honest with you. I thought, I was like, well, I only ran 2 days a week during my last endurance event training. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so slow. But I was biking 2 days a week, swimming 2 days a week, strength training a couple days a week. And my run speed just kept increasing. And I kept feeling more and more aerobically fit. And I got injured way less. And so that was enough proof for me to back up the research I was already reading that cross training and strength training are so dang important. And then paying attention to your training volume, be smart with it. Mm-hmm. If you take a month off because you're sick or you're busy, don't jump back in at the same load that you did prior to taking that time off. So, I just say, be smart, listen to your body, and don't forget to cross train.
All right, Kelsey. Well, thank you so much. That interview was chock full of amazing advice for runners. Where can we learn more about you and Move Smart? Yeah,
thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk about all of this. So you can follow us on Instagram. Our handle is MoveSmartKY. That's MoveSmartKY. You can visit our website at www.movesmartky.com. You can also check us out on Facebook, and then we have a weekly newsletter that we put out. I put all kinds of blog posts out on that about running, about pelvic health, about just general PT tips. So you can follow along. You can find that link on our website to follow along with our newsletter. We also include local races and things that you guys are putting on even. And if you're somebody that you're like, I'm not sure if PT would benefit me, or I'm not sure if I need that, feel free to give us a call. We do free 15-minute consultations on the phone. And we'd be more than happy to talk with you about, if PT might be a good fit for you.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you, Kelsey.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning into this pilot episode of Kentucky Running. I know the audio wasn't perfect, so I appreciate you putting up with that. I'm going to be working toward a crisper sound on episode 2, so make sure you subscribe to the show to get notified when it comes out. Until then, you can find more helpful resources at johnsrunwalkshop.com. We'll talk again soon on Kentucky Running.